Okay, so Tina, if you would like to introduce our speaker.
Hold on. Hold on. Okay. Hold on. Okay. So, for the first time, I have not vetted Betty, but I am very grateful to meet you online. Betty's journey began in a world of hardship and trauma, navigating through drug addiction, prostitution, and the tragic loss of both her parents to suicide. Her life took a profound turn in March 2019 following a near death like experience from a drug overdose. During this experience, she went through a detailed life review, reconnected with loved ones who had passed, and was shown her divine mission. She was even taken through the intricacies of her pre-birth plan, realizing that she wasn't merely a victim of circumstances, but an active co-creator of her life. Initially, she thought the experience was merely drug-induced psychosis, but months later, she experienced a spontaneous healing from an heroin withdrawal, confirming for her that something far greater had occurred. Based in Brooklyn, New York, Betty lives a life dedicated to service. She works as a transformational coach, podcast host, and serves as the IANDS International Association in their study in New York City local group leader, helping others discover that transformation is possible no matter their past. All right, Betty, that is absolutely wonderful. Thank you for accepting our invitation.
Thanks, Tina, and thanks, Bethany. Tina just told my whole story, so I guess it's just open sharing now. Just kidding.
Yeah.
I'm really grateful to be here. My name's Betty. I'm dialing in from Brooklyn, New York. Like Tina just shared, I'm the New York City IANDS group leader. We just started that. We've had the last 3 months of meetings, so that's a brand new thing that I'm doing with IANDS. But I've been collaborating with IANDS for the last 4 years, ever since I found them. They are such a huge part of my spiritual integration. I didn't have any language for what happened to me. I had never met anybody else who experienced the same things as me. And so IANDS is such a huge part of my life in this moment. I host the podcast for IANDS on our YouTube channel. It's called Explore the Extraordinary, where we make extraordinary experiences into just plain ordinary ones. And so I really love holding space for experiencers where we can change the tone of the collective consciousness and just really make these experiences that are happening to so many of us normal, regular, everyday experiences. So I'm a visual learner. I don't know if anybody else is. Visual presence.
In 4 years, I have went from being that.
Let me interrupt to say we all need to have our mute on while Betty's speaking. Thank you.
I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to go through a couple of slides. And sorry if you were at the IANDS conference this year, you already saw it. Sorry, Rebecca. So these are a couple of words that I would use to describe myself now. I'm a leader, I'm a podcaster, I'm a friend, I'm kind. I have the heart of a servant. I do a lot of service in a lot of different areas. And, you know, I'm a sister, I'm a daughter, I'm a coach. But before I was all of these things, I was all of these things. I was a prostitute, I was a drug addict, I was a thief, I was a maniac, I was a con artist, I was homeless. I was a really, really terrible human being. And it wasn't until my transformative experience that I found out that, you know, like I can have redemption within this lifetime. So just a little backstory about me. I'd like to show you who I was right before my experience. So this is me about 1 month before my spiritual experience. I don't know why I'm holding Christmas lights. Okay, like obviously twacked out of my mind. But I was really strung out on a lot of drugs. I had experienced a lot of trauma in my life. And so I used drugs as my coping mechanism. and they became my security blanket. They became my armor. They were my shield. They were actually my whole identity. So I just want to give you a little bit of contrast so that you can see how much transformation can happen in just 6 years. This picture is from 6 years ago. Okay, so my backstory, I come from a really chaotic upbringing. My whole family is a perpetual cycle of addiction and poverty and molestation and incest and rape. Trigger warning. I guess I should have said that before I said all those words. I come from a really dense life experience. And it was all very normal. It was like, I didn't know that any of those things were not normal. I thought that it was really normal to steal your groceries or to have a long orange extension cord going from your apartment to the neighbor's apartment to steal their electricity. I didn't know that any of those things were out of the ordinary because that's what my family did. I had zero spiritual awareness. I come from a family of atheists, so that was not part of the picture. And these are my parents, very cool looking couple, pretty toxic people, but very cool looking. And, you know, we had like besides all of the chaos in our life, my parents, we always had food. We were always clothed. You know, like our appearance on the outside had some semblance of normalcy. You know, we looked like a regular family. But my parents were both dealing with their own trauma and addiction from their lives. And, you know, that's just how you're taught to deal with the trauma in your life, is to use drugs. My parents taught me how to use inadvertently. They didn't shoot me up with drugs, but I saw that whenever they were in any kind of mood, whether it was celebration or if they were dealing with some kind of depression or sadness, they would pop a pill or they would take a drink or they would smoke something, and their whole attitude changed. And I wanted that for myself. I dealt with a lot of sexual trauma as a small child. And so I made all these mental notes that as soon as I could get my hands on something that would make me forget or not feel the way that I was feeling, I was going to do that. I watched my parents' addiction progress over the course of their lives. And in 2007, it was the height of the OxyContin epidemic. My parents were prescribed over 1,000 pills each every month, and they were facing another eviction. We were always getting evicted. I've moved like over 50 times in my life. And they were facing another eviction. The lights were turned off. The gas was turned off. This was like a desperate state for them. They were just in another state of desperation. And so they made this decision with each other that they had to end their suffering and they had to stop using drugs. And they didn't know how to do that except for one way. And that way was to die. So in 2007, my parents ended up committing suicide with one another. And I was 23 when that happened. My sister was 18. We found them. It was brutal. It was, obviously the most traumatizing thing that's ever happened to me in my life. But I had this weird understanding of what they were going through because I had been in the place where they were, like out of money, out of time, going through opiate withdrawal, and just the agonizing pain that is. And so in some weird way, I kind of understood them. And in the moment that my parents died, my addiction stepped in and it became my parent. And I throw this slide in there just in case anybody here is dealing with any kind of thoughts that are unwanted. There's always help. You can call 988. You can reach out to me. I'm a resource for you. IANDS has a bunch of resources for this kind of thing as well. And I just want to make sure that that's known that, there's another way. For me in my own life, being really involved in suicide prevention communities now, suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. So please reach out. So like I shared, my addiction became this weight around me. It became my parent. It became my higher power. It became my whole life. It became my identity. I'm even covered in tattoos of liquor bottles and packs of cigarettes. Like this was my whole identity. It became my whole personality. And it was this great coping mechanism. If I kept myself sedated and medicated, then I didn't have to think about all of the emotional pain that I was going through with the grief of the loss of my parents or the weight of poverty or the weight of trauma. The addiction just felt like it was fixing it. So this was me in the end of just one more bottom in my life. That first picture that I showed was like the end. That was really the bottom. This is another bottom of mine. I was like always getting beat up. I was always waking up from a blackout by getting punched in the face by a stranger on the street. My addiction was really taking me through the ringer. And in the end, my addiction ended up killing me. And in 2019, I had a near-death-like experience as a result of an overdose. And it completely transformed my life 180 degrees. And I'll take you through the details of what that experience was like. The first part of my experience was a life review. And I'm not just a person who has experienced a lot of trauma in my life. I am a traumatized person who maliciously, intentionally traumatized other people. Raped, beat, stole from, abused. Like, I was a malicious human being. I just wanted everybody to hurt as badly as I hurt. So my life review was not super optimal because I was experiencing the pain that I had inflicted upon other people. And then I was experiencing it from their point of view as well. And I was feeling the harm that I had caused others. And it was very weighted. And then the next part of my life review was I experienced my parents' suicide, not only from my perspective as a grieving daughter, but from their perspective as well. And I will never find adequate words to explain to you the ocean of anguish that I was drowning in. It felt like every cell in my body was covered in spikes and static and concrete, and I was drowning. And then I started to experience a collective life review, or maybe it might have even been all of my past lives. Life review was coming into this one culmination because I was starting to experience things that I had not had in this lifetime. Like, I experienced childbirth, the joy and unconditional love of having a child, but I'm not a person who's had a child in this lifetime. And then I even experienced this collective feeling of having your child die. And it was like these extreme highs and these extreme lows. And it felt like my energy was just going back and forth, bouncing up and down between, you know, the polarity that is the earth experience. So, you know, like, I'm basically in hell in this one moment. I'm feeling suicide. I'm feeling child death. I'm feeling torture, like abuse, all of these things. And so I'm thinking, okay, I must have died because I'm seeing my parents, or I'm feeling my parents, and they're dead. So I'm dead. And I guess I'm in hell, and this is it. And then I started to hear these masculine voices guiding me towards the light. And they were saying, you are worthy of all the love in the universe. You are worthy of all the love in the universe. And the first voice that greeted me was my father. And again, he just kept affirming to me, you're worthy of all the love in the universe. You're worthy of all the love in the universe. So I just kept following his voice until I kind of landed in the light. And I landed on what felt like the deck of a spaceship. It looked a lot like the Gravitron ride at carnivals, where this ride like spins really, really fast and you put yourself up against the wall and there's no gravity. It felt like I came out of the side of one of the walls, and around me were thousands of other light bodies. And we were all getting geared up for our mission to Earth. And in the center of this ship was this bright light. And you can call that light Christ light or Krishna light, Buddha, source, higher consciousness, unconditional love. It just felt like reunion. And this light was telling us that we were all on a divine mission to uplift the consciousness of the planet, and that we'd be going on our Earth mission to be part of that transformation. And everybody was so lit and they were so excited, and everybody was like, yeah, we're going to Earth. And then my awareness shifts over to another scene, and I find myself in front of a table of beings. And it all looked really 2D. And it was just like this crappy card table, like a folding table at banquet halls. And these 4 beings of light were sitting there, and they were thumbing through this big, giant golden book. And I didn't ask them who they were because I just knew that they were people in charge. They were at least in charge of something that had to do with me. And they were thumbing through the book saying, okay, it's good to see you. You're only here for information. You're not meant to stay. And I'm looking all around me. I'm like, you guys aren't talking to me, are you? Because I am definitely staying here. That place that I just came from, yeah, that feels like a dumpster fire. This place here, this feels really nice. I like it. I'm staying. And they just kept affirming, no, you're just here for information. You're here to learn the details of your pre-birth plan. And so in my awareness, it shifts to another scene, and I find myself in this big grocery store. I have this giant empty grocery cart, and lining the walls of the grocery store aisles are these cereal boxes. And every cereal box has a life experience on it. And I just start grabbing every single cereal box. I'm like, prostitution, addiction, poverty, give it to me. What else do you got? And then I start grabbing boxes of things that I had not experienced in life yet, like recovery, overcoming, being an author, being a teacher, spiritual awakening. But none of those things had happened, so they didn't resonate. And the one moment that I really like to share out of this grocery store imagery from my experience is that I picked the cereal box that said childhood sexual trauma on it. And as I picked the cereal box off the shelf, a little orb of light came out with the box. And that orb of light was the soul of the man who would molest me as a small child. And we came orb to orb to each other, and we came into contract with each other. And I had this great sense of knowing that we loved each other so much. And that's why we were playing these roles for each other. And I saw some reasons why. One of the reasons was that I had been his abuser in the same capacity in a previous life. And so in this lifetime, we were balancing the energy for each other. Another reason was that I was coming to Earth for this great awakening, this transformation of consciousness. And so I was taking on this life experience as a collective life experience as well. So as I heal my own sexual trauma, I heal for every little girl who didn't get an opportunity to heal from hers. And I felt this great sense of purpose take over me. And it felt like 2 tons of bondage had been released from me. I'm no longer a victim to my circumstance. I'm actually a divine co-creator of my experience. How freeing that information was. I felt like I could, like run 1,000,000 miles an hour. Like I could be set on fire and nothing bad would happen to me. I felt so empowered. And so I find myself back in front of the table of beings, and I'm weeping with gratitude. Thank you so much for showing me this. It all makes perfect sense to me now. I'm still not going back to Earth, but I am so tickled to have all of this really cool information about pre-birth planning. Thank you so much. And they were like, listen, you have to go back. This is not a punishment. We're not forcing you to go back. You signed up for something, and we're not going to let you miss your opportunity to experience it. And I just kept affirming, like, there's no way that I can go back. I definitely can't go back into the body that I just came from. She's a mess. She's glitched. She's broken. She has so much damage to her. There's no way to heal that. And they said, okay, if you won't go back into the body that you just came from, then we'll show you the baby that you'll be born into. And a lot of this looked like a video game to me. And that could be because of the generation that I'm born in, or because we're living in a simulation, or some combination of both of those things. But they showed me this little baby, and she was kind of spinning around like an avatar in a video game. And next to her came up all of these stats. And the stats were all of her life experiences, where she would be born, her ethnicity, her gender, the family that she was going to be born to, her adversity, parts of her purpose. And this baby was going to take on my life experience cart that I had not finished. And then she had some other boxes in her cart because of the family that she was being born into. And I thought, oh man, there is no way that I can start from zero. If these are really my only choices, then I guess I'm going back into the body that I just came from. And, as I started to sift back into my awareness, the beings of light said to me, listen, the first part of your life was boot camp. And, you know, boot camp is gross. Like somebody's yelling in your face the whole time. You're doing push-ups in the mud. It's like super tiring. You're homesick. They said the second part of your life is going to be carrying out your divine mission. You're going to have soulmates and teachers. You're going to be living in spiritual awareness. Everything is going to change. It's not going to be nearly as challenging as the first part of your life. Just trust us. And I remember having my awareness glance back to them and saying, I do not trust you guys. And then I found myself back in my body on my bathroom floor where the overdose began. And, you know, I just wrote the whole thing off as drug-induced psychosis. I thought, damn, I was so high. I thought I was talking to God. That's crazy. And I just kept living my life the way that I had always lived it. I was a prostitute. I was on the verge of homelessness. I was a ruthless liar, manipulator, drug addict. And so every second of every day was spent finding ways to get drugs, using drugs, rinsing and repeating. And so I just continued to do that for about 2 months, even though my spiritual awareness was blasted open. And I kept hearing things, and 222 would be on the clock, or 111, and like songs would randomly play or videos would randomly start playing. And I just kept chalking the whole thing up to, well, I died and I'm dead. So like weird things happen when you die. I just really didn't, I had never heard of a near-death experience. I didn't know what any of this was. And then the universe stepped in this really loud and tangible way to let me know that my experience was a real one. And I had found myself on day 3 of heroin withdrawal because I could no longer find drugs, because it was no longer aligned with my path. And so the universe made all of my drug dealers stop selling drugs simultaneously on the exact same day. Men that did not know each other. All of a sudden, I'm calling up all these different phone numbers and everyone's saying, don't call me anymore. I'm out of the game. Lose my number. And I'm like, this is so weird. How is this happening one after the other after the other? So then I had an opiate addiction. So I was in heroin withdrawal, and heroin withdrawal is insane. Some of the symptoms are abdominal cramping, diarrhea. I bet you never thought you'd hear the word diarrhea in a spiritual presentation, but there it is. You know, like nausea, vomiting, like you're sick all over yourself. I was welcoming death. I mean, it feels like your bones are made of fire and your skin is made of broken glass, and just breathing hurts. And the most messed up thing about it is that there's nothing physically wrong with you. It's just that everything in your brain is all miswired. And so it makes you think that you're in agonizing pain. And so I'm in the midst of some kind of mental or spiritual suicide. I remember thinking like, damn, I'm so sick that I can't even get up out of bed and figure out a way to kill myself. But if I ever was wondering what my parents were going through, I truly understand it in this moment. I want to die. And right then I heard a voice, and it told me that I could request what I wanted fixed. And so I was like in the throes of desperation. Okay, strange voice, whatever you say. What do I want fixed? I want to no longer be physically dependent on heroin. So then I watched these 2 little men appear in my mind's eye, and they were wearing white lab coats, and they had these little lawnmowers in front of them. And I watched these men map out every crevice of my mind. And as they plowed through with their little lawnmowers, I felt these intense hot tingles start to take over my whole crown of my head. And then there was a bright white flash. And in that moment, I was instantaneously healed out of day 3 of heroin withdrawal. And I mean, like moments before, I was sick all over myself, welcoming death. And then all of a sudden there I was, completely well and healed and fine. And I threw myself on the ground, and I was crying out to a God that I did not believe in. And I was saying, this cannot be happening. I don't believe in this. I don't believe in you. You could not have picked a more unworthy subject to bestow this kind of grace on. And just for the contrast, I was an atheist, an orphan to suicide, a homeless meth head prostitute strung out on heroin. I was a liar, a manipulator, a thief. I was a rapist. I was a racist. I was a terrible, miserable, traumatized human being. And there I was, bestowed with the grace of the divine, because none of it mattered. There was no such thing as condemnation in this moment. I was worthy. So after this experience, I obviously thought that I was the second coming of Christ. I was like out on the New York City subway system, proselytizing and evangelizing about something that I had no idea about. I was laying my hands on homeless drug addicts, saying that I had the power to heal them. It was absolute anarchy. It was craziness. And then as I allowed the dust to start to settle, synchronicities started to flood into my reality. Just these miracles, these coincidences, they were showing up all over my reality. And so I found myself on a train because I was proselytizing and evangelizing. But this train car happened to be empty, which is really bizarre in New York City for nobody to be in a train car. It's the middle of the day. And so I'm sitting there by myself, contemplating life and the world and my death or my life, whatever's happening. And the train doors open and a man steps in and he sits directly across from me, even though the whole train car was empty. And around his neck was this big blinged out 12-step fellowship necklace. And I heard a voice and it said, "That's your path. Follow him to a meeting." And, I asked this stranger on the train if he happened to be going to a meeting. And guess what? He was on his way to a meeting and he took me with him. And, this was like a deep moment of surrender for me because I knew that the universe was setting me up to succeed. So they say to make 90 meetings in 90 days when you go to 12-step rooms. And so the next day I went to a women's meeting. And I looked messed up when I came into this process. And I'll just show you a picture one more time of who I was as all of this was happening. This was the person that all of these miracles and coincidences were happening to. And, I had these big holes all over my face and my arms because I was completely convinced that bugs lived inside of me. So every time that I would use drugs, I would pick myself raw, trying to get the bugs out of my skin. I was missing most of my teeth. Thank you, the universe, for letting me buy some teeth in my life today. I was just really, really a mess, and I looked like it. And I walked into this woman's meeting. And this woman grabbed me when I walked in and she gave me a hug because she could tell that I was new. And she whispered in my ear and she said, "You are worthy of all the love in the universe. You are worthy of all the love in the universe." The same message that I heard my father say in heaven in my light experience. And I melted into this woman and I had the deepest moment of surrender in my whole journey. And I rested my head on her big boobies for as long as she would let me. And I deeply cried into her. And for 1 second, I believed maybe I am worthy of all the love in the universe. I had no evidence pointing to that I could be worthy of any kind of love, let alone universal love. But something on a grand scale was happening to me. And so I just had this little tiny mustard seed of hope that I could be worthy of some kind of love. And after that happened, so much divine intervention stepped into my life. Through some more beautiful signs and synchronicities, I found myself in a long-term rehab, a long-term women's facility, which, despite what some men might think, is not sexy pajama parties and pillow fights. Okay, it's hardcore. I don't know how I survived it, but I stayed there for 1.5 years. And in that time, that's where my spiritual integration took place. I still didn't know what happened to me. I just knew that I was divinely guided. I was hearing the voice of my father, who's my #1 spirit guide. I was hearing the voice of angels. I was channeling the collective and Archangel Michael every day. And I started to understand that my words have power and that I have been manifesting every second of my life. Now, obviously, I have this knowing and pre-birth planning, so some things are preordained, but my thoughts have always been shaping my reality. My thoughts before were, I'm homeless, I'm impoverished, I'm addicted, I hate my life. And so that was my reality. And today I have different thoughts. I'm an abundant individual. I'm surrounded by spiritual community. I love my life. Good things come my way. I am worthy of all the love in the universe. And so that is now my reality. So one of my main spiritual gifts that came out of my experience was that I learned how to practice the art of bibliomancy. And that's where you open up a book to a random page and it speaks directly to you. Yes, there's a word for it. I did not know that that word existed, but there is a word for it. So I was just always picking up random books and opening them to, random pages. And it really felt like God was talking directly to me. And I'm so grateful for that experience. And I have a couple of books that I keep with me all the time so that I can find the answers that I need. And while I was in treatment, I began my healing journey, and man, I had oceans and tidal waves and tsunamis of emotions waiting to meet me. I had never felt my feelings before. I used drugs for 22 years. Long before my parents died, I was already an addict. Their death just heightened my addiction. And so I had to deal with all of those feelings, but I was in a safe space where I couldn't run out and use drugs behind my feelings because I was locked in this facility. And I didn't have access to a cell phone or the internet for a year and a half. So I win the game of life. But my healing journey started, and so I had to do it the old-fashioned way and read books. And so every week I would go to the library, and it seemed like God was putting certain books in my path there. And my healing journey was not linear. I kind of expected it to look like just, straight up ascension. And in reality, it was a lot of twists and turns, and it was really, really uncomfortable. And I was introduced to all the different parts of myself. Now, after my spiritual experience, I developed a pretty healthy spiritual ego. I mean, I literally thought that I was the second coming of Christ. So I had to kind of compartmentalize some stuff. And then I started to actually look at my shadow, which is really what my whole healing journey is about integrating my darkness. I've experienced a lot of darkness in my life. So I'd like to introduce you to the parts of me. So I've done a lot of character development around the different aspects to myself. So my addiction, he's a man. He's a gay man. His name is Richard. He kind of looks like Tony Montana from Scarface. He's a very loud voice in my head that's constantly trying to encourage me to go back and give up on my recovery and go back to my old coping mechanisms. So he lives inside of this glass house in my mind. And the walls of that house are made up of the insanity of my addiction. So every time that I hear him calling out to me, I can see how my addiction made me insane because I have done some ruthless, insane things, all for the sake of drugs. I also have a wounded inner child who's always knees to chest. My inner critic is constantly tearing me to pieces. I deal with some technology addiction. I love mindlessly scrolling to distract myself from my feelings. I deal with person obsession. It's called limerence, where I will get completely obsessed with a man and just create a whole fake life inside my head. And I'll escape into that fantasy for hours, again, just to avoid the present moment. And heaven is the present moment. And so my ego is always pulling me in all these different directions. My inner saboteur looks a lot like the chick from The Ring. I deal with binging and purging disorder. My inner controller looks a lot like Miss Trenchbull from Matilda. I have a super insane judgmental part of me. I deal with sugar addiction as well. So these are all aspects of myself that I'm on the healing journey with. Some of these things I have years of abstinence from. Some of them I have hours of abstinence from. And it's not linear. It kind of goes in these waves. And I've come to a state of acceptance around that. I've had some fits and starts and stops and twists and turns. But at the end of the day, I'm always dialed into the fact that healing feels better to me. So one of my techniques that I use to heal the darker parts of me is when I wake up in the morning, I cover these pieces in this beautiful pink light. And for me, pink equals healing. And so every morning I'm spending at least 30 seconds. I'm not spending some insane amount of time. I'm just intentionally saying hey, darkness, I know that you're there. I'm going to soften you and heal you in this moment. Maybe it will last the whole day. Maybe it will only last for 30 seconds. Maybe I'll get up out of bed and stub my foot and I'll forget all about my spiritual practices and that God exists and I'll hate everyone and everything. But at least I know that for the first 30 seconds of my day, I've started it in a spiritual space. So if I can end cap my days in spiritual awareness, I'm doing really good. Another part of my spiritual journey was finding my spirit guides. And our spirit guides are our earth customer service agents. It only works if you call them. So like if I have a problem with my cable, I can't just like not do anything, right? I have to call the cable company to get the help that I need. But sometimes you're on hold for a really long time. There's a language barrier. Maybe you get the wrong department, the wrong customer service agent. So it's kind of been that way with me with my spirit guides as well. So I have a team of 12 spirit guides, and they each have a different purpose in my life. So I have a manifestation guide. His name is Philip. I have a fashion guide. His name is Francisco. I have a bunch of other guides, and they just help me in all these different areas of my life, but I have to remember to call on them. Another one of the gifts that I received from my experience was that I was able to believe that if I ask the universe a question, it will respond to me. This whole world is a big echo. So I wasn't sure if I was going crazy or if I was actually having spiritual experiences. And my dad was communicating with me all the time. And my father is a much better father in the non-physical than he was on earth, for sure. But I still wasn't sure if it was him. And so I asked him for a sign. And the first sign that popped into my head was a fox. And so the next day I went to TJ Maxx. And if you guys have ever been there, it's like a bomb went off in there. It's like insane, right? Like there's forks in the underwear aisle. There's like shoes in the pots and the pans. Like it's crazy in there. It's totally chaotic and everything is randomly placed. So as I was online to pay for the things that I was getting, there was this random book on an end cap by the cash register. And it was a book called Amazing Dads. And it was a picture of a daddy fox and a baby fox. And I knew that it was my dad. And it was such a beautiful gift to have that confirmation. So now every time I see a fox, whether it's a picture of a fox or I don't see a lot of actual foxes in Brooklyn, New York, but I know that my dad's with me. And just another story of synchronicity I'd really like to share is, again, this tool of asking the universe for a sign. I discovered it while reading Gabrielle Bernstein's book, The Universe Has Your Back. And in that book, she says that you can ask the universe a question and pick a sign, the first random thing that comes into your head. And if it's for your highest good, then the sign will manifest in 24 hours. And so I had a question about some guy. I'm like always wasting all of my profound spiritual questions to the universe about some guy. And I really wanted to hang out with this guy. And I asked if he was for my highest good. And the first sign that popped into my head was a squirrel. And this was the middle of winter and it was snowing outside. And I was kicking myself in the butt. And I was like, why would you pick a squirrel? You're never going to see a squirrel. They're all gone. They left for the year. And I was so upset. And so I just threw my hands up in the air and I said, forget this exercise. I want to go see this guy. I'm going to do what I want to do when I want to do it. And I'm just going to scrap the whole thing. And so I'm walking to this guy's house the next day and I'm watching the snow crunch beneath my feet. And then all of a sudden, a squirrel ran right across my feet and went up this tree. And I was like losing my mind. I could not believe this was happening. And I was listening to a song about soulmates. So it was like a movie was happening. And I had the soundtrack in my ears. I'm staring at the spiritual sign right in the face. It's just parked on this tree looking at me. And then all of a sudden, the guy comes out of his apartment across the street. And so the leading man enters the scene. The director cues the music. And it's just like this beautiful, magical moment. And I'm blown away. And so the next day, I was still floating in this pink cloud of this experience. And I'm walking down the street and there's a random book abandoned on a mailbox. And I just had this really strong intuition that the book was there for me. And so I went up to the book, I opened it up to a random page, and the title of the chapter that I opened up the book to was The Squirrel. These big, huge words right in my face. I mean, my brain exploded, melted into a puddle out of my head onto the ground. I could not believe it. And the next day after that, I was walking down the street again, still not expecting to see any physical squirrels because it's the middle of winter. But on the bottom of a lamppost was a gigantic sticker of a squirrel. So see, I thought that it had to be like a physical squirrel, but the universe sent me all these other really cool ways that I didn't even think of to confirm my sign. So I asked the universe if this guy was for my highest good. So I'm thinking I'm planning my wedding in my head. I'm like, okay, we're going to have 7 spiritual babies. They're all going to be named after chapters in the Bible. And like, I'm going nuts. I'm losing it. And this guy rejected me. And I'm calling him incessantly. And I'm like, but what about all the squirrels? What about all the squirrels? And he's like, girl, I don't know what you're talking about, but you're getting kind of psychotic. I don't know what you're saying. I'm like, God sent me all these squirrels and said that we were supposed to be together. And he was like, no, I don't want to be with you. So I thought that highest good meant love, marriage, whatever this kind of like human idea of romance is. But in reality, that was for my highest good because it taught me this awesome lesson in rejection. And that's something that I needed to learn so that I could move on in my self-love journey. So that when my partner was really ready for me, I would be ready for them. And that was my experience. And so I just want to show you one more time what transformation looks like. You don't have to die to have a transformative experience. I did, but I like to learn things the hard way, but you don't have to. And here are the main lessons from my experience. Change is inevitable. We are meant to transform, okay? We're like butterflies here. Now, you don't know that you're going to be a butterfly when you're a caterpillar. You're just this little earth-dwelling grub walking around eating leaves, and that's life. But I truly do believe that each and every one of us is meant to transform. It doesn't have to be this alchemical experience like mine was. I mean, transformation happens all the time. Even going to the grocery store is a transformative experience. You went in without groceries, you leave with them. That's transformation. Another lesson is that there's no such thing as condemnation and you are loved unconditionally, okay? If a homeless, drug addict, prostitute can be loved by the divine, then you're doing A-okay. Your thoughts create your reality. Change your thoughts to change your life. But not only changing your thoughts, changing your patterns and behaviors. And if you need support with that, I found so many great resources. I love working with people one-on-one as a coach, but if that's not something that you are interested in doing, I found amazing free resources for people. So please reach out to me so that I can connect you to some of those resources or some of the books that helped change my life and my patterns and thinking. Another lesson that I learned is that you are worthy of all the love in the universe. You really, truly are. Each and every one of us are. Even the person that you despise the most in your life, they are also worthy of all the love in the universe. And the world is an illusion. You don't have to get so attached to the character that you're playing. This is a big, giant movie that we're in. And Source is the director, and there's unlimited film and unlimited budget. And I don't have to be a method actor today if I don't want to. And don't get me wrong, there's lots of experiences that I have where I want to be a method actor. I want to be righteous. I want to be judgmental. I want to be defensive. And I really want to go into the character that I'm playing here. But I know from my spiritual experience that I don't have to do that if I don't want to. And it feels a lot better to be loving. So I want to thank you guys so much for giving me an opportunity to share with you. And I'm going to leave it there. Thanks again.
Thank you for your presentation, Betty. That was very interesting. Thank you. Okay, so I probably you and I need to have a conversation at some point. I don't think this is the place to do it, but I definitely would love that because I was getting information as I was listening to you. Okay. So any questions from anybody, please? I don't see any hands up. Okay, very good. Donna, go ahead.
Betty, you are just the most loving, fabulous cereal box person that I've met in my life. My question to you is, how are you reaching out to the people of your age group? Doing one-on-ones and giving them resources? You have so much to give. I'm so grateful you're in my life.
I'm so grateful for you, Donna. I'm so happy to see your face. I'm happy to see your box. Thank you so much for coming and supporting me. Yeah, I think that it's amazing, the work that I get to do with IANDS, and this conception of our podcast that we have now has really opened up the door for me to connect with so many other people, not just experiencers, but people who are having transformative events happen in their life. And yeah, I have this great opportunity to put myself out there in different spaces and have Source send me the people that are meant for me. I also I have like a regular day job. I work at a clinic in Harlem. I work as a substance abuse counselor. So I get to give back with my lived experience. And that's very challenging. I don't have any great success stories or anything like that. Addiction is a real terrible monster. But I know that my light is needed there, even if it's not to transform anybody's life, just to hold space there. So I used to think that I had to change the world, but now I just kind of know that I just have to be. That's it. Like, this is just my mission, is just to be. And whoever's meant for me finds their way to me. I'm really active in my 12-step fellowship. I sponsor young women in my fellowship. So again, my spiritual story isn't always used in those spaces, but I embody it. And I know that that shines out.
Very good. Thank you. Let's see, Rebecca first, and then Peter and someone else. Okay.
Hi, Betty.
Rebecca.
Hi, friends. We loved hearing your story again. I was wondering, people ask this a lot. I'm curious, have you seen signs of the Great Awakening that you saw in your near-death experience? Do you think it's happening now? Has it happened? Is there a timeline split? I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of that.
Thanks, Rebecca. Rebecca's the best, guy. She's an angel reader. Go check her out. One of those great connections from the IANDS community. So yeah, this is my understanding of the Great Awakening, and it's changed since my experience. So the download was very loud and clear, and it's still etched in my head in absolute, it's branded in there, that we are in the midst of transformation. We are transcending from a level of third dimensional thinking to fifth dimensional thinking. What does that mean? It means that we're going from ego-centered thought to spirit-centered thought or service-centered thought. We're getting out of self-centeredness and we're going into spirit-centeredness. So it's shifted for me a lot. I used to think like, oh my God, we only have 2 years. We have to do everything right now. Like, this is crazy. It's happening. It's like, it's the end. But I realize now that whether you believe in the Great Awakening, that some sort of transformation is happening, or whether you believe in Armageddon and Doomsday, both of those things keep you out of the present moment because you're waiting for something else. Heaven is here. Heaven is now. The Great Awakening is well underway. It's in this moment. Every second of the day, I have the opportunity to choose awakening over the other. And so that's where I'm at now when it comes to the awareness of the Great Awakening. I am surrounded by so many spiritual people. All day I'm in elevated conversations. So I know that awakening is happening. I don't think that there's like a day or anything like that. I think that, again, the present moment is heaven. So thanks for that reflection, Rebecca. Love you.
Thank you. Peter is next. Thank you.
Well, I don't really have a question. I'm in awe of you, and I'm so grateful for your life and how you were, I don't know. It's like, it's not you make Superman look like nothing. I mean, it's just beautiful. It's so wonderful. You're such an example to show that no human being on this planet can sink so low that they can't change. And I'm grateful to hear your story, and kudos, keep going, man. You were going to save so many people or help people turn around. I know we have to save ourselves, but you're great. You're so great. Thank you for who you are.
Thanks, Peter.
Thank you, Peter. Jane, and then Willie Cancel and Robin Abbott. Jane.
Hi, Betty. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm also a friend of Bill W. And I know what this is like to go through the steps and, and find out who you are, because, how we are, we get sober. We have no clue. So I've spent the last 40 years finding out who I am. And it's amazing. I've never looked back. I never regret it, and I know you won't either. I'm so happy for you. Your story just, it's one of the best recovery stories I've heard. And that's saying a lot because I've been around the 12 steps for so long. But that's wonderful. I'm more power to you. Keep up the good work. And the other thing, do you know about complex PTSD? Are you familiar with that? Okay, I wonder, because some of the symptoms you're describing are complex PTSD, which is a brain function issue. It's not psychological. So I wish you all the best and best of luck. Thank you so much for sharing and for what you're doing to help people in recovery.
Thanks, Jane. Thanks for staying so I could find my way. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jane. Willie, you're next. Your sound.
I did that intentionally. Hi, Betty. I'm like Peter. I don't know what to say to you. But I have to say that you take me back to New York. I'm a New Yorker too. I'm from Brooklyn. And so just listening to you sort of like, sends me back there. But I'm glad that you're on. And just a question, I do know what to say to you. Do you feel sometimes that you are the universe?
That's a really good question, Willie. Yeah, one of the big things when I first started to integrate my experience was I came upon this branch of philosophy called solipsism. And solipsism is the belief that there's one mind creating everything. Whose mind? Is it my mind? I thought for a long time that it was. Maybe you're all projections of my subconscious, or maybe I'm a projection of your subconscious, or maybe it's God's subconscious. But yeah, I do have those moments of feeling at one with everything. They happen in connection with other people. So for a long time after my experience, I just thought that I was dead and that I was trying to get back to heaven. And so every time I would make it to a recovery milestone, I would cry out to God, okay, God, I haven't used drugs in 7 days. That's enough, right? Can you come back and get me yet? And then I'd make it to 2 months and I'd still get no response. And I'm like, when are you guys coming to get me? I felt like some poor elementary school kid, like left behind with no parents to pick them up. And it took me a really long time, and not until I got through A Course in Miracles to realize that heaven is now. I am not waiting for anything to happen. The universe is within me and everyone else. And so I really get those moments of deep oneness and connection with others, even people that I can't stand and annoy me. I even see the spiritual lesson in all of that. So yeah, thanks for that reflection, Willie.
Well, thank you. Robin and then Grace. Hi, Robin.
Hi, Betty. I don't know if you remember me from IANDS when we talked outside for a bit. Yeah. You are such an inspiration. You truly are. I've thought of you many times since I met you. I got bumped off for a little bit. I'm here in St. Kitts and the internet is not the best. So I missed some of your story, but I did hear it when we were in Arizona. And you are such an amazing person. And this is what God does. So powerful. I mean, it's like I've been in AA for many years myself. And I too, it's a transformation that when I look back, I'm a totally different person, and just like you are. And so that is what I try to do. It's to help others who want help. And I'm just so excited to hear you tonight. I'm really exhausted, but I was like, oh, Betty's going to share. I have to be there. And here I am. So thank you all for being here tonight. And I love you all. And I love my life. And it's just beautiful. Thank you.
Love you, Robin. Thanks.
Thank you, Robin. Grace is next.
Hi, thank you, Tina.
Thank you.
My Lord. Hi, my name is actually Angela. I'm using my daughter's computer. So I just wanted to say, like all of us here, we're just astounded and inspired. And oh, I have chills at so many parts of your story. And a quick little synchronicity before I ask my question to you. I work with wildlife as a rehabilitator, and last night I was called out to Hartford, and it was a fentanyl addict. And when I showed up in a very poor part of Hartford, and I had a lot of judgment, like, why am I here? What am I doing here? And I walked into her apartment, and she had saved a crow, and it was in her bathtub, and she had paraphernalia everywhere, and she was putting it away and embarrassed of herself and her life, and she had a lot of missing teeth. But as I picked the crow up to leave, she said, "Please, can I give you a hug?" And it showed me the beauty that even exists in the downtrodden, and you and your story. It's a synchronicity for me to be careful of our judgment of drug addicts and be those in addiction. And I myself am in recovery too. So who am I to judge? So there's that synchronicity. And then you talked about synchronicities, and I wanted to thank you for that. And that the love is expanding exponentially with your share. And my question to you is, clearly you're a very articulate woman and you remember the books you read. And I find a struggle, and maybe it's menopause, but I'd like to ask you if you have any suggestions on like what allows you to remember, because it sounds like after 20 years of heavy drug use and the things you've told us you've been through, how is your mind not fried? And is that something that God brought back to you, or did you specifically ask universe to help you remember the things you need to remember?
Wow, that's really great, Grace. Thanks for sharing, and thanks for your vulnerability. Yeah, my vocabulary before my experience was just this long laundry list of drugs that I used and how much money it cost to be with me. I did not use my mind for anything else because there was no reason to. This is all over the last 6 years, just from educating myself over again. Like I when I listen to myself, I'm like, who's talking? It doesn't make any sense to me. But I also use affirmation, and I know that the information that's meant for me is going to stick with me no matter what. And if I do forget, God's going to send it back to me in some sort of cool, unique way. So I use affirmation like, I will remember this. I feel my remembrance of this. And I just, I continue to affirm things. So like, if you say, I can't remember things, the universe doesn't say, let's give her a little boost and have her remember something. They just echo back to you exactly what you affirm. So you say, I can't remember anything, and the universe says, she can't remember anything. So even just doing something small, like changing my language around something like that, has been a really helpful tool for me. And just have like that, me having that deep-seated faith that if I do forget something, the universe is going to bonk me on the head with it. I try not to have those spiritual bricks thrown at my face anymore, because I've already experienced that and it is terribly uncomfortable. So instead, I just try to pay attention to the subtle signs now.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. That was wonderful. I also feel that you got realigned. Okay, so someone with a sense of humor, martyred artist, you're on. Sound, please. All right.
You can hear me. Okay. Hello. Hi, Betty.
Hi.
My name is Robert. Martyred artist is just the artist handle that I use. It's actually, it was a friend of mine insulting me that became a, they said, oh, you're such a martyred artist. So it's
cute.
Betty, I really want to thank you. I'm grateful that I met you, in a fellowship, and you're absolutely inspiring. And it's, I feel like we're, kindred spirits in the sense that there's a lot of in our fellowship, maybe some folks are a little scared to branch out or maybe read other texts that are part of the fellowship, and that's fine, But the way you present yourself, and you've used the word integration several times, and that's kind of been my goal. Like all these things that I've been reading, very similar, kind of had a vibe like that when we first met, and it was the ability to deliver that. and you really have some grace in the way you present that, and you make me want to step up my game, really, in many areas of my life. And I'm grateful to know you, and thank you for being of service. Thank you.
Thanks, Robert. Grateful for you.
Thank you. Okay, so Jamie first, and then Robin, and a couple of other people. Go ahead, Jamie.
Thank you, Tina. I just wanted to say thank you, Betty. It was really wonderful to hear your story. I too am in recovery, and I'm very tired. I just got back from a long trip, and I just have learned to just show up as I am, even if I look like I'm, gonna pass out over here. But yeah, it's like each time I hear somebody's story of, their experience, strength, and hope, it is inspiring, and it touches in me, like it's reminding me of who I am. And there were just so many pieces that you shared that I was like, me too, me too. So I appreciate you being here tonight, and thank you so much.
Thanks, Jamie. I'm so happy there's so many people in recovery here. It's like so beautiful.
Yeah, it's a big deal. It's a big deal. So thank you.
Thank you. Kathy?
Well, I'm just speechless. That was just such a wonderful sharing of your life story, Betty. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I have a niece that's getting out of, she was sectioned. It's her second time that she was sectioned, and she's just coming home this week. So I'm so excited that I'm going to have this to share with her. And I'm just so grateful to hear your story, and you're so articulate, and just to see how you've turned your life around is just such an incredible blessing. So God bless you, honey, and thank you so much for spending this evening with us and sharing your story.
Thanks, Kathy. Grateful for you.
Thank you. Glenn and then Bethany. Glenn, are you there?
Hi, yeah. I'm in a dark room, so sorry for that. Just quickly, yeah, Betty, what a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much. I think I had seen your video on YouTube maybe, so I was just very excited to be able to come and listen as much as I could. And one thing that caught my eye, so to speak, is that you mentioned you had a heat in your brain. Is that right? When the guys were like mowing and clearing out your thought patterns or your brain patterns or whatever? And I'm intrigued by that because I actually had a similar, not exactly the same, but the heat was a very similar kind of healing. And I could feel this thing, and it was about my nose, but it was in the brain, like my head. If it had persisted, I would have felt like I needed to go see the doctor. I was just wondering if, was that the one and only time you experienced that? It's just so out of the box for me. Anyway, but thank you for everything you talked about.
Thanks, Glenn. Yeah, I have like a lot of different theories around what happened. Sometimes I think that I'm in a different timeline, and I was kind of put into some sort of med bed, and it was just like this instant spontaneous healing. I mean, these are stories that I tell myself that help me wrap my head around something that was so miraculous. But I definitely haven't had like a huge healing like that again. In fact, I just had my gallbladder removed on Wednesday, and I just kept affirming for years. I was like, it's just spiritual sickness. I don't need to go to the doctor. I can heal myself. I've been healed before. But then I started like puking blood, and I was like, maybe I should go see the doctor. So I'm in a state right now where I'm at a crossroads with myself, because I have experienced a spontaneous healing, and then I have to kind of wrestle with, well, how come that's only possible in one part of my life and not another part of my life? But I believe that this is a lesson too, to kind of trust Western medicine, as much as I don't want to say that sentence. But anyway, I haven't had the heat experience again, but I think it's really awesome that you just affirmed that it happens to other people too. So thanks, Glenn.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bethany, you're next.
Wow, Betty, I just love your story. You just speak right to my heart, and you are so courageous and unapologetic about the incredible, incredible transformation. It just moves me so much because I have so much work to do on myself. And I just think, you know, here's a woman who is just so good at confronting your stuff and addressing it. And like, wow, it's so honest and powerful in that. So I appreciate that you share your truth with us. It means so much to me. I know that you mentioned, and you've mentioned it before, I've heard you talk about it before, A Course in Miracles. And I'm just wondering, can you tell me a little bit about how it's helpful to you? Because, you know, I lean back from things that seem to me like organized religion. So I don't know if that's organized religion. I don't know enough about it. Can you share a little bit?
Yes. Thanks for giving me this space, Bethany, too. I really appreciate you. I just want to share one other thing before I share my Course in Miracles story, but I have this amazing opportunity to make a universal amends. And I get to do that every day by working in the recovery field. You know, like I caused a lot of harm. I share my story like without fear of judgment because God doesn't judge me. So I shouldn't care if anybody else does. And the world's not real. So why not just be honest about, you know, like who I was and who I am today? Because the contrast is really what I'm trying to get, you know, the point that I'm trying to get across, or that God's trying to get across. So I don't say it like, you know, sometimes I feel like it's almost too much to share, but at the same time, I have this great opportunity to make a universal amends. I help people today. You know, like I caused a lot of harm. I can't go back in time and change any of that. But today I just be a better person moving forward. And that's all that I can really do. And so every time that I get to help a woman in recovery, I hold the image of a woman that I hurt in active addiction in my mind. And I feel like the energy gets repaid. I just wanted to share that. Thank you. Okay, now my Course in Miracles story about my boyfriend, Jesus. Let me tell you all about it. So A Course in Miracles is a metaphysical text. It's a channeled message from Jesus. It was channeled in the 1970s through the mind of a militant atheist psychotherapist. And she just started receiving all these downloads, and, you know, she knew that it wasn't her words that were coming out of her. And it took many years to write and edit. And there's 3 parts to A Course in Miracles. There's a text, there's a workbook, and there's a manual for teachers. And the workbook is a reprogramming, and there's 1 lesson for every day of the year. And it's a self-study, so not a cult or organized religion. But there are lots of Course in Miracles study groups. I belong to one. And, you know, like when I found A Course in Miracles, I thought that it was a handbook for the recently deceased, like in the movie Beetlejuice. I was like, oh, this reads like stereo instructions. It's totally insane. I need a caseworker to help me get through it. Where's Juno? But I just kept reading because I was convinced that if I read that book, I would ascend out of my body. And that's all that I wanted to do, was just get the heck off of earth and go back to the heaven space. And that was it. And so every day I spent hours each day reading the book. Some days I didn't understand 1 word that I was reading because it is very dense and it's obviously not from a human mind. And I just kept going. I kept going. And then I got to the last paragraph of the text. I took off my shoes. I laid back in my bunk bed. Yes, I lived in a bunk bed for 1.5 years. And I just really believed that as I read the last word that I would shoot out of my body. And I didn't want to have my shoes with me when that happened. But I got to the last word and nothing happened, except that I had a lot more information. And that book has been my guiding star in my life. It's actually my #1 favorite book to use bibliomancy with. I love opening it up to a random page and seeing what God has to say to me. And, you know, it's really dense. I actually read a bunch of books about A Course in Miracles before I actually started reading the course. So when I was in treatment, you know, like I was poor. They would give us $20 a week, and like you got to buy shampoo and stuff. So I kept going to the library, and one day there was a book, and it seemed like it was about to fall off the shelf, and it was like totally glittery all around it, and it was there for me. And it's all I saw was the word miracle, and I thought, oh, I like miracles. I'm a miracle. Let me pick up this book. And it was A Course in Miracles Made Easy by Alan Cohen. And I devoured that book. I mean, I stayed up all night reading it. And I went back to the library, and I kept trying to reserve A Course in Miracles, and the librarian just kept telling me, like, this book does not exist. There's no author. There's no way to reserve it. I don't know what you're talking about. And I was so frustrated. And so, until I could get $30 together to buy the course on my own. I was just kept reading and renting books from the library about A Course in Miracles. And I read Marianne Williamson and Karen Casey and Gabrielle Bernstein and all these really cool course teachers. And so I was really prepared to get into this super dense book because I had read so many books about it first. But I love A Course in Miracles. If you ever want to get together and read it, Bethany, I'm totally down for that.
Thank you. Okay, Bethany, were you done?
Oh, I just wanted to say thank you. That is just awesome because I have tried to read A Course in Miracles and I just feel like I'm just not processing it. And I think I'm a pretty capable reader. So,
girl, I'm going to write a book about A Course in Miracles, Bethany. Just wait for mine to come out.
Okay, I will buy a copy. That would be awesome. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. And Sharon, is that you? M. Davis?
Yes, it is. Yes, it
Very
is.
good. Ask
Hi,
your question.
Betty. Hi, Betty. Spiritual awakeness. You and there was someone on here, an angel reader. I don't know what her name was. I too am transitioning through a spiritual awakeness, but not from like you said, you don't have to be addicted to something to come through a spiritual awakeness, but you must be humbled to come through a spiritual awakeness. So that's where I'm coming from with it. And it comes in many, many, many different forms. And I was just wondering because it's very hard to explain to people who are unaware that want to listen, but don't really want to do any research to find out how to listen. So how would you describe that to someone? Because you deal with people who come to you really from almost a blank space before they start to heal. How do you describe to them what a spiritual awakeness is?
Thanks, Sharon. Yeah, I work in a lot of different spaces. So some people are more open to information than others. Again, I'm not here to teach or preach or proselytize. That is not my purpose. So one of the downloads from my awakening was that there are these 3 waves of volunteers that have come to Earth for the Great Awakening. And I am a second wave volunteer. First wave volunteers would be people who were alive and making a difference during the psychedelic revolution, our kind of first little intro to transformation of consciousness in this lifetime. The second wave volunteers are people who are going to be like in their 40s and 50s. Third wave volunteers are going to be younger people. Some people are coming onto Earth born in an awakened state, or they're younger people, or even indigo children, like people who have autism or neurodivergence. So a second wave volunteer, their purpose is to do nothing. The first wave volunteers, they were the way showers. They had to do all of these things, like they were protesting, they were out changing rights and really making a pathway for consciousness. Second wave volunteers are only here to shine their light. And third wave volunteers are here for the end of the transformation. They're really here to pull it all together. So that's Dolores Cannon's work, and that's really helped me a lot because, like I said, when I first came into awareness, I had a big spiritual ego, and I was like, everybody has to believe everything that I think, and they need to know all of the things that are in my head. And as I integrated more and more, I just let people be where they're at, and it makes my life a lot easier that way. If somebody is open to information, I love feeding off of that energy too, but not everybody is, and that's okay. It's not everybody's purpose to spiritually awaken in this lifetime. And that took me a long time to integrate and understand, but my life is a lot better now because I do live in that awareness.
Yes, and I thank you for that because I was thinking the same thing. Not everybody will do that in this lifetime. That's where I'm at right now. I can see that everybody will not spiritually awaken at the same time, nor in this lifetime. But thank you. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Sharon.
You're welcome.
Greg is next. Greg Boucher. Are you there, Greg? You must have stepped out. Is anyone else?
Can you hear me? Can you
there
hear
you
me?
are. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Greg.
I'm trying I'm doing something slightly dangerous. I'm driving.
Okay.
But my eyes are on the road. It's fine. I cut the end because I had a rehearsal tonight, so I almost couldn't come. Glad Betty was able to speak to everybody. It's awesome. Hey, Betty. You mentioned indigo children, so I don't know if I've ever mentioned to you, but I have a child, really two children with autism. You're saying they're farther along spiritually than others?
Yeah, my understanding of it is that their spirits are so high energy that they can't compute into a human form properly. And so that's where neurodivergence comes in, that they're so spiritually evolved and they're really here to show us the way around social constructs. My nephew is autistic and he doesn't understand, like politeness, or, he doesn't have the same sort of common sense that, a regular person does. And that's a beautiful thing, because social constructs are garbage. Like, we invented them. They don't work anymore. And so I think that's what the wave is really about, is about showing us how to break those down.
Yeah. There's definitely a lesson of love in there too, with Okay. Yeah. Thanks.
Thanks, Greg.
Thank you, Greg. Anyone else? Okay, Laurie.
Hi everyone. Hi Betty. Thank you so much for sharing your story. Just a truly transformative experience you were given. I am, like you said, you had gallbladder surgery. I'm having a medical issue that will need surgery too. And the other day, I really like what you said about putting it out to the universe and asking. And I always think of Tina, because I first, after my NDE from toxic mold exposure in my home, I met Tina and I walked her labyrinth and I asked for all my angels, God, Jesus, and guides to come and walk with me. And my whole body lit up in goosebumps. And ever since then, it still happens often. Well, I've been a bit struggling, but I do remember to keep asking. And one special thing the other morning was I woke up with a song in my head, and it was, put your hand in the hand of the man who stilled the waters. Put your hand in the hand of the man who calmed the seas. Take a look at yourself so that you can look at others differently. So put your hand in the hand of the man from Galilee. And I raised my hand up and Jesus took it. And I felt him. And I've been raising my hand up every day now, because I just want to keep the spirit world close to me, the positive, the beautiful, loving energy. And I like that you do the positive affirmations at the start of the day. I'm trying to practice that more, but I love the way you talked about asking the universe whenever you feel in need. So your story was amazing. Thank you so very much. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing that, Lori.
Welcome.
Thank you, Laurie. You're a great photographer. Bethany is next. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I always want to make sure I give a chance for lots of people to ask questions, because I love learning through other people's questions. But I wonder, Betty, when it comes to integration and your ability to feel balanced and live in this world as a human, right? What are some of the things that help you do that?
That is such a great question. Thanks, Bethany. So yeah, I have a lot of grounding relationships. I live in New York City, right? So like, I don't have trees. I don't have like a patch of grass to go lay on and ground myself. I have to find other things to do. So I do a lot of visualization. I have this really great technique that I do with water. I'm sure a lot of you guys know that water holds memory. So every morning when I wake up, I drink a liter of water, not because I like water, just because I want to get it over with. Like, please, I want to be done with this. But I speak affirmation and grounding into the water. And so, you know, I say like, I'm structured, I'm disciplined, I'm compassionate, I'm kind. And then I surrender some of my shortcomings like judgment and defensiveness and control. And I just trust that, like, as I gulp down the water, every molecule in my body is being grounded with those spiritual principles that I want to inhabit for the day. And that's one of my techniques. Another technique, I'm in a relationship with an atheist. So that's a very grounding experience for me. I spend all day in really elevated spiritual conversations. And so I need my partner to be my grounding agent for my earth experience. And so I'm really grateful for that relationship in my life. You know, I'm also in the midst of the illusion. You know, like I live in New York City and I work in Harlem in New York, which is, you know, just not a great neighborhood for the crisis that's going on right now with opioids and addiction. And so every day I have this opportunity to witness the illusion and continue to affirm that it is illusion. Every single piece of it. So like in one city block, I have the opportunity to see a person overdosing, a baby being pushed in a stroller by a young couple, a man stepping out of a Porsche, a homeless person like going to the bathroom on the sidewalk. I have this whole width of human experience just in one city block or in one subway car. And so I have an opportunity to constantly be reminded that none of it is real. The good, the bad, the indifferent, none of it is real. And I want my vision to be fixed on true reality, which is oneness, which is God, which is forgiveness. And again, like it's a moment to moment thing. Sometimes I get really wrapped up in the perceived suffering of the world, and it takes me a while to bounce back from it. But I get to, you know, hang out in spaces like this where we're all connected, even if it's just for an hour and a half. We are in a spiritual space right now, and that's going to carry me through the rest of the day tomorrow. So thanks for letting me share.
Thank you very much. Greg, did you have another question or comment? Greg?
No, I think I left my hand up because it's my phone and my eyes are on the road. But yeah.
Okay. All right. So I think Laurie, you still have the hand up, or again? They're good. All right. Very good. Anyone else? We have a couple of minutes more. Okay, Bethany.
Thank you. Thanks, Tina. Thank you, Betty. Betty, I wonder, the holidays are coming, and it's, you know, people have mixed experiences around the holidays. And I wonder if there's anything that you have planned through IANDS to support people.
Oh my God, thank you for sharing, Bethany. Yes. So every year, well, since I've been working on the back end, we do a holiday party at IANDS, and let me grab the link so I could put it in the chat. This year, we're going to be combining, I get to do this cool thing every solstice and equinox where we have a creative connection. So if you're a poet or you're a photographer or you're a musician or any sort of creativity, we hold space for us to come together in a creative way. And even just storytelling is a creative art. Being a human is creative. So you can just show up and just contribute in whatever way you feel called to. But we're also going to have games and prizes, and it's going to be on Saturday, December 28th from 1 to 3 p.m. It's free. It's just a cool space to come and connect. And it'll be just like this, a bunch of boxes on the screen connecting in a spiritual way. So yeah, thanks for that, Bethany. I'm going to put the link in the chat.
Thank you. Donna?
Yeah, Betty, would you put in the chat all your other, like your Facebook, TikTok, your different ways that people can interact with you?
Yes, absolutely. And just in case you are listening and you want to, my handle on everything is Buddha Betty. It's a play on words. I'm not actually a Buddha, not yet. But I'd love to connect with anybody, and I'll put all that stuff in the chat. Thanks, Donna.
Thank you. So Bethany, We're 8:30, but we forgot to mention the fact that we're going to be doing a different in January. Maybe we should announce it now.
Okay, let me just pause the recording, and before I pause it, just give a tremendous shout out and thank you to Betty for
Yes.
joining us tonight. I think
Great job.
so
Thank
many
you.
here that just treasure what you shared. So thank you so much.